Here we are taking a look at some basic editing in Pro Tools. As you can see, I've imported 3 audio files into this session. Here are our 3 tracks and our 3 tracks on the left hand side. I can mute these tracks, or I can solo them by hitting the S like this. You'll notice that this one's brighter than the bottom one. That's because the mute was already on at the top. So I can take that off, which means when I take off solo, that also goes off mute. Now, let's have a quick listen to this in solo. Okay, so that's our 3 tracks that we're going to actually be editing up. Now at the top here, I've got 3 different edit tools that I can use. This one here is the trimmer tool. It trims the beginning or the end of the clips. That's the first of the tools. The second tool is the selector tool. It allows us to select part of a track, either in the middle or at the end of the track. I can select a number of different tracks at the same time, or all of the tracks at the same time using the selector tool. The third one is the grabber tool. It allows me to grab the audio file and move it around. But this one I'd like to move back to the start so they're all in line. So that's the grabber tool. Now along the top here, I've got a bar that allows me to select all 3 of these tools at the same time. That's the smart tool. At the top of a stereo waveform, I can access the selector tool. You'll notice it changes to the grabber tool at the bottom of the audio file, allowing me to grab the audio and move that around. And finally, if I hover to the beginning of a clip, it allows me to access the trimmer tool, and it will trim that down. So that's the 3 tools in the smart tool. Here I've got slip and grid. These are 2 different edit modes I'd like to introduce. Now, the grid mode will move things to the grid. The grid is set to quite a small subdivision at the moment. Now, I've just used that to zoom in, and you'll notice that when I move the audio file now, it jumps to the grid. If I select slip, I can move this anywhere. So it will allow me to move between the grid lines. And the grid lines can be turned on and turned off. I'm just going to zoom back the other way for a little moment. And I can use the R and the T key to do the same thing on the keyboard. So there's a couple of shortcuts. I'm just going to drag that back to the start. There we go, right back to the start. Okay, so I'm just going to trim that down a little bit to about there. And I'm just going to show you how that will actually edit to the grid lines. Now there's the grid lines turned off. There's the grid lines turned back on again. And of course I can change the subdivision of the grid lines. And this is obviously going to conform to my bars and beats at this point. So I'm just going to put that to a very small subdivision. You notice it's moving ever so slightly, but I actually am just going to keep this on the quaver. Okay, let's drag that back to the beginning now. Okay, so you can see I've got bar 1 and bar 2. Now if I use the T key to zoom in a little bit further, or the R key to zoom in a bit further, you'll notice that I've got beats 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then it jumps to the second bar. Up here I've got it set to bars and beats, which conforms to the beats over here with my grid lines. And it is set to grid over here, so that I know that things are going to move to grid. Okay, so these 2 icons here, this allows me to control what is enabled on the horizontal line at the top. So you can see I've got my tempo and my markers and my minutes and seconds, even though my main time frame is bars and beats, which is right there. It allows those horizontal lines to appear or disappear. This one here controls the vertical lines. So you notice that some of these lines will appear and disappear when I've got them selected or not. I've got my ins and outs, which I need, my track color, my inserts I need, so I'll leave those ones, and they're the ones that I'll use for the moment. Okay, so next let's look at a new track. We're going to create a new track here. So I've gone track, new track, stereo. I'll make an audio track, and this is going to be for the task that I'm going to complete, which needs to conform to the ticks, which is the bars and beats rather than the samples. So I'm going to call this kick, and I'm going to create a kick drum sound using one of the other audio files. So I'll just click create there, and it will create that audio file for me. I'm going to drag this to the bottom so that it's away from my 3 audio files, and I'm going to double click on the color to change the color of that track, and I'm going to change that to brown. Okay, so at this point I need to try and find some audio to actually put in there. I'm looking for a kick sound, so I'm going to click solo on this first track here, and I'm going to play that through, looking for a kick sound. Okay, so let's just zoom into this a bit more and see if we can find an actual kick sound. I heard something that might work. Now you'll notice that when I stop, it returns back to where I started from. If I turn this icon here on, at this point, it's continuing from where I actually stop. So I'm actually going to not have that on because I'd like to work so that it actually returns to where I need it. Okay, so now I'm just looking for a sound that I can use as a kick drum. So I like something I heard in here, maybe this audio file or this audio transient here. Let's listen for that. Of course, it's conforming to the line, so I need to get in the middle of that line. That one sounds okay. Now, I need to cut it at this point. In order to cut it, I need to go all the way down here into my edit menu, and I need to go separate clip at selection, which is Command E. So I can just either select it from the menu, or I can go Command E. I'm going to actually undo this. So that's Command Z. That'll undo it, or from the menu again. So there's Command E. Now I'm just going to undo that, because what I could do is select this A to Z icon here, which is keyboard focus. With keyboard focus, it allows me to use the B key to break it. So there's a quick shortcut for you right there. There's a kick sound. I'm liking that one. Now I can drag that straight down onto my track if I wanted to. Pop it down here, but you'll notice it creates a little hole. I'm just going to Command Z on that. What I'd like to do is click Option, click and drag it, and that will actually duplicate it. And that works all the way through Pro Tools. I'm just going to click the R key here to drag this in so I can see it. Now that's at the beginning there. So there's my first sound, my kick sound. Okay, and you can see that I can zoom out on that. I can actually change that. I'm just going to trim a bit of the start off here. So I'm just trimming that down using the trimmer tool, drag that back to the start, and create a small fade by hovering in the top right hand corner. There's my fade out. That will just make sure that I don't have any clicks or pops at the end of that particular sound file. And I might even put one of those at the start, just a tiny one, just in case it hasn't been cut at the zero crossing point. Okay, so there we go. Let's take the solo off the top, put the solo on the bottom, and there you can hear the kick sound. There it is again. Okay, that's fine. Now, I need to have one of these on every beat of the bar, first, second, third, and fourth beat of the bar, because I'm going to create a bit of a EDM sound beat for now. So I can Option, click, and drag on that again, and that will actually duplicate that audio file and put it onto the beat because I'm in grid mode, so it allows me to do that. Great, okay, I'm happy with that. Let's leave it at that. Now I'm looking for a snare drum type sound, so I'm just going to solo this track. Let's have a listen to what I can find out of here. Okay, so I'm going to zoom into this one here and see if I can find a sound that I might be able to steal. That looks good. Now I'm going to actually tab to this transient. So there's a tab to transient icon. I can now hit the tab key and it's going to jump straight to the first transient of that sound. So if I zoom in, you'll notice that it's found the transient. And I'm going to break that again using the B key. And I can tab to the next transient and I can break that again. So that is going to be my snare drum sound. Now I've only got the kick track for now. So I'm going to double click underneath the kick track and create a track for my snare sound. So there's my snare sound. Now I've changed the color. I'm just going to drag that down and pop that into my snare track. And that's going to occur on the second and the fourth beat of the bar. I'm going to option drag click that one across. So now if I solo both of these, I should be able to hear them. Okay, snare's a bit loud, but I can adjust that later on. All right, so you can see that they're linked in together, and these are together as well. Okay, so with that done, I'm now after a little hi-hat sound. Take those ones off and solo my third track. Okay, so I'm listening for some sounds here. There's plenty of them that I can use as a click sound. And I can tab to this sound again and break it, and tab to the next one and break it again. So there's my sound. I'm just going to option click and drag on that. Oops, I haven't actually created a new track yet. So I'll double click down the bottom here, change this to my hi-hat sound. Click OK on that and just change the color to something else just so that we can recognize it. Maybe something a little bit brighter. Okay, so there's that. All right, so now I can drag that one down into my final track, and I need this to happen on every half beat or every quaver beat. So I'm just going to trim this down a bit. I'm going to put a fade on that, which I've done. I'm going to solo that. Now a couple of things are going to happen here when I try and move this around. Right, I need it to actually duplicate across here. So I'm going to hit Command D, which will duplicate this. Sorry, I'm going to actually drag it at this point first up. Notice when I drag it, it just drags the file out. Okay, so that's no good for us. Let's try another method. I'll try and go Command D. You'll notice that it doesn't take the fade with it, which is a problem. So I'll go back to that. I'm going to, at this point, go up to the Edit menu, and I'm going to go Consolidate Clip. That's now going to consolidate that audio file, including the fade, into a separate audio file, and it will put that in the Clips menu up here as a new audio file. That's perfect. Great. Now I can Command D this and duplicate this across to every semiquaver. There is going to be a problem though. If I look at the end of that, if I zoom into the end of that, you'll notice that it's not quite on the beat. And that's because the audio file was not quite a quaver before I duplicated it. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do about that one. So I'm just going to go to the end here. You'll notice it looks very close, But as it gets further down the track, it's going to get further and further away. So I just need to be really careful with my editing here. So I'm actually going to Option click and drag it. Unless it was exactly a quaver, it wouldn't actually fit. It's going to be too short. So you can see if I zoom in here, there's a small gap between each one of those, and even at the end. But we know that it's actually going to be right on each one of those quaver beats. Okay, so if I take the solo, or if I solo all three of these, I'm actually going to do this a different way. I'm going to hit the top one, shift the bottom one, and click Option, Shift, and solo, and it's going to solo all those tracks. And there's my drum beat. So I've managed to steal the audio and create a drum beat.